Hey, welcome back. Now, imagine yourself being chased and terrorized by a mysterious figure in the shape of Green Goblin from Spider-Man movies in the dark night and in the jungle. Now, that's something that really happened in Peru in a small village called San Antonio, and that is what we're going to deep dive into today. Hey, I'm Hemant,
I'm Arvind.
and this is not just your book. So, Arvind, give us a scoop. We are all ready to hear what's happening in Peru.
What happened in Peru?
Okay. It's been a while, right? Like, it was not so long ago.
It's been almost 7 months.
7 months, less than
More
a
than 7
year.
months. So it's been. So what really happened is in Peru there have been a lot of remote villages, and not just villages. There were also some parts of city. There have been a mysterious figure where it was appearing, and it was terrorizing the people who were there. Where the terrorizing, it was mostly in the same way as their legend as something called pilakadas. So pilakadas means face peelers. So imagine something mysterious comes to you overnight and then tries to peel your face off. I can't even imagine. It's so graphic, right?
Exactly. One wouldn't want to imagine.
So that's what it was these villagers were facing. And the most unfortunate thing was the kind of response they were receiving from the government, where they were just dismissive of what was happening. And this again wouldn't really support, or like it just adds more fear to you, right? Like there is no one there to look for. What people look for in a government is security and protection, and these people, poor people, couldn't get that from that government. So
Instead, they got ridiculed and dismissed. And
yeah, it's and they had to stand for themselves. That's what happens, right? Like when the people couldn't. And so and the main thing was they were chased, or it was all mostly happening during night time. And so just to give the context, they were seeing like a UFO craft. It was a acorn shaped craft, so which were usually accompanied by people or like humanoid figures. Let's call them humanoid figures, because these humanoid figures weren't like your usual kind of a human figure. They were at least 7 foot is what they were describing.
Mhm.
And they always came in pairs, which is also quite interesting, right? They always wanted someone to be as a backup if something happens. And they were using some kind of hoverboards, which seem to snap in a magnetic way when they able to step on it. And it's something where they were able to move around with ease, and they were literally terrorizing these people. And whatever the report we saw was about this. And let's maybe dig each individual pieces of what was reported, and let's talk what we think. But in short, this is an incident which hasn't been still solved yet. Still, we don't know. No one knows exactly what all things have happened. But let's dive in.
That sounds good, and it is even to hear that something like this could happen is actually terrorizing, right? Because you would only see such things happen in movies, and you wouldn't even expect things like this to happen in real life, not even in your wildest dreams. And I think we have proof of people getting hurt, having injuries, and photos and videos of that. So this is not just another speculative story, but more of there is evidence, there is police involvement, and countless people's interviews have been documented and all that, right? So yeah, where do you want to start? What actually happened? So you said there was this UFO kind of a craft, and there were like humanoid figures that came out of it. So what happened next?
So there were multiple people who have been reported injured during many incidents. This wasn't happening just on one day or a week or something. This has been happening over the period. So let's take like one specific incident where a girl named I think Talia. I believe like, she was like only 15 years when this happened, and that's one of the reason why police and government had made themselves involved in some sense. When you say like, okay, police involved, and it was very, very minimal. They had zero interest almost
Mm-hmm.
trying to investigate this.
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, like all they did was they came in and said, oh, even without actually going into an investigation, they just concluded these are some river gold miners. They are trying to terrorize these people out of the village so they can have the whole place just to do their mining activity. And this is what theory the government came up, and they just case closed and they just left.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem was it didn't stop, right? Like just because of give some reason, you have to also protect the people. That wasn't really happening, and the people had to defend for themselves. So
That's
specifically,
that's a good point. It doesn't matter if it's a human affecting the people of the village, or if it's really some extraterrestrial humanoid or whatever. The police should have supported that villagers no matter what, and
exactly,
that didn't happen.
yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't think these people were claiming it was extraterrestrial or it's superhuman. Some people, so it was like split between ET and human people. But let's talk about that later. First, let's
Mm-hmm.
like get into
Mm-hmm.
what really happened to Talia. So Talia was just having a dinner, finishing her dinner with her family, and it's just like usual night. And then I think most of these villages they have some kind of a backyard where they have some fruits or some things which grows. I believe she might have just wanted to go and get some dessert, some fruits
Mm-hmm.
from her backyard. So just she left the house and she just went to the backyard, and out of nowhere, two two kind of body armored suit flying figure, humanoid
Mm-hmm.
figure,
Mm-hmm.
came to her backyard, and they started stabbing her. And I think they mixed some kind of, they made some concussion, and they applied on her face, and they also injected something to her nose which made her unconscious.
Wow.
I wouldn't say like completely unconscious. Yeah, maybe it's more like she was in a some paralyzed state, and they started taking some form of laser or laceration equipment, trying to cut and peel the face off from her,
That's
which is
crazy.
crazy, right? So, but for some reason, they weren't. Looks like they weren't doing a good job of what they were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, shouldn't say good job, but it was a something. Some mistake was happening, and she gained some amount of consciousness, and she was able to speak. So she was shouting with all her energy. And since like the village has been already terrorized for a while, and they were already vigilant about any kind of incident, so the family, her brother, father, everyone were just like they were like few meters away, right? Like just talking about like something which happened just like right in the backyard. So they immediately came in and tried to shoot at these figures. They did have certain made handmade guns or
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And yeah, one of the other things, nothing happened when they shoot, but they tried to leave, flee the incident. And they did try to drag her because they didn't want to leave her just off, like because they did start something, and I think I don't know what they had plans, what kind of plans they had, but then finally they had to drop her off and they fled. So they escaped in their craft and went off. So that's what happened, and there was physical bruises around her neck.
Mm-hmm.
And worst thing is, he had to go through a lot of trauma and post-traumatic depression and all these things. Go
I'm
through.
sure this is something that's been etched in her memory forever,
Yeah.
right? So you said something about peeling the face off. What is the agenda behind it? Why were they trying to take the skin off of the face?
I really don't have any idea. So that's the thing which is so confusing, right? So weird about this. Why does someone want to do this, right? Like
Right.
what are you going to do with this face? My personal opinion, if again this is all like speculation, like I said,
Yeah.
right? This case hasn't been really solved. No one really knows what is happening. My suspicion is this is just a cover up. Because if you think, right, this Pilakada phenomena, this
Mm-hmm.
is as a face peelers, this is a legend which is understood in that village.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
way you want to hide any of your maybe some really notorious illegal activity is to make some murky situation where it's hard for people to discuss. It's too outrageous for anyone to talk about, and it is also in some way is not too outrageous for people to understand what it might be also, like wherein you say, oh, it's just like some legend, maybe people are just like thinking that it is some legendary thing, maybe it's some other thing. So you kind of create certain confusion state where people get distracted by this, maybe something else is going on in the background.
Right.
So my assumption is, or suspicion is, this is a distraction for something else which might be ongoing in that area, is what I feel. And it's not just particular to this village, right? Because the miners hypothesis is completely ridiculous. Because if
Okay.
it's just gold miners, right, it should be just only particular to this village. And miners having this kind of technology, because this what the technology we're talking
Exactly.
about is like, it seems like it's a reverse engineered technology. At least that's what we seem to, because the best known hover or a jetpack kind of technology is, I think, a company called Gravity. I don't know if you have seen it. It still makes quite a bit of noise, and whatever these people were noticing, it was almost silent. Only when they were moving, it just had a very slight humming noise. In the same way how we have heard from other places. But for me, the more I hear this, right, I can't stop thinking or connecting this with what Michael Herrera was talking about in Indonesia, because that is also a remote village. There was some incident which was happening, and one thing which we found was there were human abduction which was happening. So I wouldn't be surprised in form of organ trade or human abduction or yeah, something else going on. Just like it wouldn't be just as simple as a drug trafficking, because you don't need to terrorize people to do that, because yeah, it's very simple. People do that, and especially if you have such cloaking technology or in craft and hovering these kind of hoverboards. I think you would be doing far more notorious thing than just trafficking drugs,
Yeah.
because yeah, these other stuffs are $1 trillion
Exactly.
industry.
That's where I was going to. Let's say even if that village has a huge amount of gold under their under the surface, right? And these big corporations or some mafia gang or whoever that is trying to get these people away so that they can procure that land, dig it, take all the gold out. Even if that's the case, we've seen a lot of movies, we've heard a lot of stories. Those cartels or mafia or some big corporations don't work in this way, where a few people come in jetpacks and
Yeah,
try to terrorize. They just walk in,
get the job
they
done. They
do
don't want to.
exactly get the job done with whatever force is needed. All right. And I also read somewhere that when the father or the brother of the girl that was about to be abducted shoot one of these humanoid figures at point blank range, it struck the humanoid figure. The figure fell down, fell on his butt, but then in the next instant stood back up
Yeah,
and then moved away with no reaction at all, like
exactly.
nothing happened.
So we do have military grade armor which can take such kind of force. Wouldn't call that armor kind of thing is alien technology. We
Okay.
do have such at least like in top military you may have, but still it doesn't seem like a normal thing of some illegal miners to possess.
Right.
Maybe a drug mafia may have, but still it's crazy that they were able to jump back immediately, because you would sustain for these the amount of energy coming from the bullet. That kinetic energy has to get dispersed some way, right? It has to go through the body armor, and you would still sustain some amount of damage, and for you to recover that quickly, it's not something human.
Human, exactly. So what is associating this story to the topic of UFOs and extraterrestrials and alien tech? Is it the hoverboard tech or the way they were maneuvering over the forests? One thing that you would say is bringing it close to the face.
Okay. Like one thing, there are multiple things.
Hmm.
The main thing I would call out is the craft which is associated. These are acorn shaped aircraft with no propulsion, visible propulsion,
Okay.
and no wings, none of these stuff. And they do kind of five observables. They were able to move like fast as without like any of a noise or any discernible thing. And even the other weird thing they were observing was sometimes these craft were also transparent. So which is
Ah.
like we have heard from other observation in other places about UFOs. The other thing I would say is like the kind of technology, right? Like we are talking about hovering. It's like gravity kind of a technology which people often used to call with that name. I know like gravity isn't the best of technical word, but that's something usually fits good here. And then other aspect is things like they have also kind of people using powerful lasers or radiation. which we have seen like in nuclear silos or things where like these crafts have pointed some kind of a laser beam, powerful enough beam to even sometimes cause physical damage to certain places.
Right.
So that is also something which has been observed. The other part is height or the tallness or like whatever you say. Like so these are like 7 foot.
Figure.
But on the other side, there is a strong argument to be made that these could be just like humans, which I personally feel like it is high likelihood like it might be just humans who possess these advanced technology. Because when Talia was saying what really happened, and she was hearing them speaking. Those two people were speaking Spanish, and one of them was speaking Spanish in their local accent, because Spanish again they have different dialects and things like that. The person was using their own local dialect, and she was able to clearly recognize what he was talking. And the other person seemed to have some kind of an accent. Maybe most likely that person wasn't local. He was from some other country, seemed to be, but he was also speaking Spanish. And yeah, and usually we do hear anytime ET, okay, there's some kind of telepathic communication or things like we don't hear this kind of talk, but seems to be. And they were also in some kind of a panic and rush. They seem to mess up. Like it doesn't seem to be a traditional abduction thing which we hear.
Right.
This seems to be some deliberate terrorizing kind of a thing, and also very specifically to what people already have as a belief through their legend. And this wasn't just like in this village, right? Where we spoke, where there was another village nearby, where like another who was terrorized. But then when you think like, oh yeah, now we feel like more, oh this must be human. But the problem is that kid was reporting lately after this phenomena happened, or after a month or so, he was saying he saw a gray or some different type of alien creature inside in his house. We don't know if he's just like because of the trauma. We don't know, or maybe Talia could also have been hallucinating. Or okay, I shouldn't say hallucinating. Maybe she is also thinking her memory is trying to fill in certain shocks which she would have gotten. We don't know. We cannot be sure. But one thing we can be sure is something which is not like a usual general human population. Definitely not minus. And the most ridiculous thing is why the government isn't doing anything. Why they didn't want to investigate. Why they just ignored. And because this is not happening just in the remote village, right? There was other places which had significant amount of population, which also had army bases, which also was pretty strategic importance for the country, and still they just ignored, which means like wouldn't ignore the fact there is some conspiracy behind this.
Right. Unless the local police itself is in some kind of ties with this other group that's trying to terrorize the village, be it humans or be it extraterrestrial or whatever, right? So, what do you think? You think is it an alien trying to abduct a young girl from a village, or is it humans being cruel humans? Leave us a comment.